Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer, and this is Sasha. Spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison. Also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison. You want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, Ducksauce, that's what they called this fool. He's probably about 5'10", skinny Asian dude. Now he was missing a couple teeth, like down to the nubs, like they were broken off. And where it was, it was from running his mouth at another spot. He got those knocked out. And then the nubs and another tooth, they got knocked out later on. See, a lot of the people that I'll end up having on here, just about every one of them will know who this is that was in prison with me, regardless of whether it was at the medium or the low security, because he ended up going from the medium to the low security. And seeing as how that happened, this was not somebody who was like under the radar. This was somebody that had, that was going to force you to notice them, okay, through their deviant, wild, out there, in your face behaviors. Yeah. This person was a nut. Now, I've used nicknames, of course, for people that they went by because, just for legal purposes, first off. But second off, that's what they called them. They're pretty funny nicknames. So, Ducksauce, I heard from people, talking about him because when I first got the medium, I've told this before, but, somebody, because I'm like, dude, what's this dude's deal? And that's how I ended up hearing about him, because I was sitting down sending an email out to my ex, who I affectionately referred to as a no good, down dirty, awful hussy. I was sending her an email, and this guy Ducksauce, I had just got to the medium, and being like a young guy with a clean shaved face, I looked young. I looked like a high school kid, and in a place that's full of deviants, chomos, and stuff like that. It wasn't a good look, okay? And when I did my own thing, they must have thought, maybe I was one of them or something. I don't know. So the opening months, until I established myself and made my friends, kind of awkward. Got approached by a few people, but it didn't matter if you were the meanest, angriest looking gang member with face tattoos. You're going to have deviants approach you. There was a guy at the low security had to tell this young guy about that. Big, giant, 6.5 foot tall black dude who had face tattoos. Had to tell the young guy. He's like, nah, they wouldn't hit on me. They wouldn't do that to me. I wouldn't put up with that. And he's like, listen, homeboy, they hit on me. If they hit on me, they say stuff to me, you think they ain't gonna approach you? This dude was like 6.5 foot tall, giant man, face tattoos. So yeah, it was like that. But anyway, I'm sitting down at this computer, and I've told this before, but I mean, it was like, oh my God, where am I at? This is one of the things that made me, hate life immediately at the medium. So I'm sitting there, and he just starts talking, basically just talking. There's no conversation happening. He just won't quit talking. I said, listen, I'm trying to type an email here. And he just keeps on talking. I said, listen, I'm not going to cut this short. You know what I mean? Listen, I'm a straight dude. It's something I ain't confused about. And I remember saying this, because it's something I said before. I said, it's kind of like mayonnaise. You know what I mean? That ain't for me. I don't need to try. No, it ain't for me. You know what I mean? I look at it, I'm like, nope, ain't for me. So, and I gave him this like 2-minute long lecture, try to get him carry himself on somewhere else. And then he looks at me sideways and he says, yeah, I remember when I thought I wasn't gay too. Anyways, get out of my face. And I end up having to go tell somebody. And they're like, ask Marshmallow's boy. I'm like, Marshmallow? What's a marshmallow? And so I had to go talk to his man about that. Now, Marshmallow was a big old boy. He was probably, he's at the higher end of the 200s. Not that tall though. And he was known, he was a chomo just like Ducksauce was. And apparently the story, that I heard, which I'm pretty sure it had, because I heard this story from multiple people talking about it. They said that Ducksauce got there and he was just nasty. Didn't shower, dirty, didn't wash clothes, none of that stuff. And basically, at the medium security at Petersburg, there's a weird dynamic because, like I've said, they don't mix and they don't do SNY whatever protection yards, you know, because I'm from Roanoke, Virginia. I ended up at Petersburg, and you know, a lot of people would think they'd be lucky to end up at a prison so close to home, being as it's federal. Most people from Southwest Virginia get sent to West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, New Jersey. There's a prison in New Jersey called Fort Dix. You couldn't make that up. That's a true thing. A men's prison called Fort Dix. A lot of the times, the federal prisons are like on military bases. Like Petersburg was like literally across the street from Fort Lee. At the yard at the low, you could see them doing military exercises, like with tanks and stuff out there. It's pretty wild stuff. People coming down from helicopters on the ropes and stuff, you know, just training out there across the way. It made for some cool stuff every once in a while. Now, when the guards would qualify, you know, have to go and qualify, they'd lock everybody down. I mean, like one's going to, I mean, it's just, I guess, just, I don't know. But we'd have to be locked down like the whole day whenever they do that. But anyhow, and another thing is just funny to add in there. There's a women's prison in Virginia, and it's called Goochland. Yeah, that's just something funny I figured I'd throw in there. You know, you got Fort Dix, Petersburg, and Goochland. You know, Fort Dix, New Jersey, though. Petersburg and Goochland. That's in Virginia. So anyway, the story was that he was nasty, just, you know, everything else, and basically Marshmallow basically like claimed him as his boy, made him clean the room, spotless, made him bathe, basically got him cleaned up and acting right. Now, even so, Ducksauce was not the highest functioning adult, but he knew right from wrong. He definitely knew right from wrong. Okay, not the sharpest tool. He was a couple chicken nuggets short of a Happy Meal, but I mean, he knew good and well right from wrong, and he just, because the place he was at, he got by with a lot more than he would otherwise. And at the low security, he really showed out over there, and that's how he got those two little nubs knocked out of his mouth. Oh, I press this. We're all good, though. All good. I said press that. But yeah, it's a weird dynamic of sometimes chummers get a little bit too comfortable, especially at the low, doing a little too much and then get knocked back down. You know, there's plenty of stories of stuff like that. Chad from Blood on the Razor Wire, he had a funny story talking about this guy who refused to move from the table. Like, this is a free country or something like that. And he said something about somebody hit him in the head with an apple as hard as he could, like fastballed it. And then the guy went, eh, which was funny seeing Chad say that, because Chad's usually, you know, pretty composed, pretty serious. But, and talking about Chad from Blood on the Razor Wire, he does a lot of great work getting people out of prison. Incredible story himself. But he told that story, and I mean, I was sitting there relating, because I remember times that would happen at Petersburg at the medium security. Not as much there, but at the lower security, lower respect. Higher security, there's more respect, but there's more consequences. So, I mean, you take it as you may. Some people say, I'll be a higher security, higher respect. Yeah, you're going to get higher respect. You're not going to have as many luxuries. And, you know, the consequences are higher. You know, people stealing people and stuff like that at the low security. You got some fist fights, occasionally a lock in a belt, lock in a sock. Well, so Ducksauce ends up being Marshmallow's boy. And, you know, I guess he's like his boy. He's pretty much his punk. But I don't guess it was an exclusive thing. I don't know, because he was always going around just saying anything to anybody, like, all day. That's what he did. I mean, seriously. And he just would cross those lines. Okay, you talk about just, he'd get a little bit too out there, and he'd have to get, you know, put in place. But like basically as Marshmallow at the medium, he didn't get as much problems, because Marshmallow's a pretty big boy. And you know, it's kind of funny now, you know, I talk about certain things, and I talk about certain things influencing and stuff like that. It got me to start training judo. I mean, straight up, saw Marshmallow put some people down, and somebody said something about he'd trained some judo before then, but it was like he'd get a hold of people and he'd trip them and throw them down on the ground. Now, it wasn't, I don't know, it could have just been where he was big and a little crafty, because I saw some other people grab a hold of that jacket and slam some people. But Marshmallow, he's a big boy. He's very overweight, had a real young face, overweight, but, you know, he was known to, you know, he may be getting a fight if it be necessary. Like, he wasn't anything super tough or anything like that, but it was known that he wasn't just going to sit there and take something. He's going to speak up and stuff like that. And, they had their little groups and stuff over there, and it wasn't really respected or nothing. But anyhow, so they lived in the cell together. And, they'd be fixing food together. He'd have everywhere they'd be together, most of the time, most of the day, every day. Now, something else about Ducksauce. I remember one time there was this guy, Aryan Brotherhood guy, who got kicked out of the Aryan Brotherhood, actually, there. Made him cover all his tattoos in like a week period, which is insane. To get like a 3x3 foot, like this much worth of tattoos done on your body in a week. But that's what they told him you got to do. You do that or we're going to put steel in you and get you off that way. Because, they let him pass because it's Petersburg. And because it's Petersburg and a lot of them had short sentences, where they're going to get more time for and get sent somewhere else. They're like, we're close to going home, so here's what we're going to do. Have them cover them up. It's what it is. But anyway, that guy Max was his name. And turned out he had like some type of statutory charge. I looked it up. He was telling the truth. And he really wasn't a chum or anything like that. He was like he was young. He was like 18, 19, got a statutory charge with a 16-year-old girl, something like that. He married the girl. And I looked him up just on an old Facebook, something like that, just to see, like, not to talk. But a lot of these people, like, when I tell these stories to my friends and family, I look the people up. Because I remember full names. First, middle, last names of these people. Ducksauce, I know his full name. Marshmallow, I know his full name. And I looked the pictures up. I looked Casey, my mom, people like that. When I tell them these stories, I look these names up and show them a picture of how crazy these people actually look. And they're like, whoa, yeah, they do look a little bit wild. Strawberry, that guy, showed them pictures of him too. He actually died in there. But anyway, Max asked Ducksauce, like, he had a question about, like, what was for lunch, some type of, just some normal question. You just ask somebody. He was somebody that was close by, so he's who he happened to ask. And so he starts asking him the question, and I remember Ducksauce sitting down at this computer, and he just sitting there, and he looks at him, and as Max starts asking the question, he looks at me, he starts going with his tongue, and Max, whoa, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? I'm sorry, what's the problem? Now, to be honest, I heard he was adopted, Ducksauce. I don't know. But I'm not really sure if he had an accent, like a foreign accent, or if he just had a speech impediment. But he didn't talk like, normal. So I don't know if it was an accent, like from, parents from another country, or if he just had a speech impediment. But either way, he talked a little funny. And then he's like, what's the problem? And Max asks him the full question again. He lets him actually finish the question out this time. Max finishes the entire question. Now, Max is a bald-headed Aryan Brotherhood dude. Bald head, like with a little white trimmed-up goatee. Probably about 40 years old. Strong. That dude hadn't lifted weight in God knows how long, or even worked out. Got out there on where we lifted dirt. We didn't have weights, so we lifted dirt, so I'm in khaki pants and sheets. And he's able to rep over, something like roughly about 300 to 320 pounds in a dirt bag. It's shaped kind of like a pillow, the bag we had with these inserts put on top of it. He's able to rep that for a few. I mean, so he got some muscle, stout fella. Mean-looking Aryan Brotherhood dude who'd been playing the Aryan Brotherhood part till they kicked him out. And he's talking to this little punk chomo. You wouldn't guess that Max would be the type of person that this little weak lame chomo would do this type of back talk and disrespect to. But danged if he didn't. So he waited for Max to finish asking the entire question. The entire question. And then he's like, well, and he just sits there looking at him like this. And Max like, well, do you know? And Ducksauce went, and Max threw his hands up and went away. He'd do other dumb stuff, like to mess with people if you allowed him to. This is a big thing I've talked about. God forbid you end up in prison. See, we didn't have prison YouTube back when I was out on bond for 2 years. I looked up everything I could on YouTube. Oh, just dumb documentaries. Fleece Johnson, Turned Out Alabama. That's all we had back then. So part of the reason, I say, God forbid you end up in prison, you want to make some of the same mistakes I made, is because I did tons of research and searching I didn't have anybody who give me realistic advice, and it's so different, prison to prison, state to federal, a serious medium versus like the freak show Petersburg medium, place to place, it's different. Based on the people I've met who've been in different places, I got a lot of, insight into this, and plus the place I was in, I got some insight and crazy stories from that. Never thought it would be of any use. I thought it was just torturous hell that I'd have to go through. One day it'd all be done, but apparently it's left me with some stories. But anyhow, I talk about this stuff because if you are going to go to prison, which you're not, you listen to me, but let's say you're on bond and you're watching this, you can understand what I'm trying to say here. You set up boundaries. You let people, like Dr. Phil says, and I hate to reference Dr. Phil, but you get treated how you let people treat you. People pick on you, people do this, people play with you. You allow people to treat you the way that you get treated. And if you set up boundaries and let people know, I'm not the one to play with like that. Now listen, I'm not trying to be a tough guy, but we're not going to do that. Ever. Like that guy Nubby, the inbred man. The story was his fingers got chopped off for messing with, that he was a diddler. Well, his diddling fingers got chopped off. Turned out his dad was his granddad, his mom was his sister, so a dad and a daughter, and then he popped out like genetics, and he'd go up to people, and he'd walk up to people, and he'd take one of them nubs, and he'd go, hee, and I said, no, don't poke me at that thing, we're not going to do that, because if you didn't, he did that to certain people every day, and they'd be like, oh, thought it was funny. No, I don't know where that nub's been. He was a deviant too. But just like that, Ducksauce would do stuff like that, okay? And I remember a couple times, this fool would like back up twerking at people. I'm not making, this happened. Everybody who's been there, there's about 5 or so people who were there that listen to these stories every now and again, and they will tell you, he'd do that. And if you didn't let him know, listen, you crazy, I'll snatch you up, get out of my face. Don't you ever do it. Don't you think about it. Don't you dream about what you just did ever again. That needs to be something that is erased from your head and never happens again in your life. If you did not let him know, he's going, like I said, he talked about crossing the line. He was a habitual line stepper if you didn't set that boundary up. Okay? So, now, the speculation on this, the word, the rumor, I don't know 100% that this is what happened, but let me give you the facts, and you can make your own conclusion about this. Ducksauce was terrible about telling on people. See, at Petersburg, well, in federal prison, you had computers. Each unit had 6 computers, at the low and at the medium. Now, at the medium, you had roughly 150 people in each pod, and there were 12 pods, okay? At the low security, building to building buried. I started out in Richmond Hall. I had about 350 people in it. Okay, then I went to Carolina Hall. Carolina Hall only had 140 people in it. But either way, each building had 6 computers with email, MP3 player. You got to hook it up to validate it every 2 weeks. That way nobody could steal it. It only worked for 2 weeks. And to download the songs on it, stuff like that. Then they had just a recent criminal law reporting thing that you could look up on there. Announcements, stuff like that. I mean, it's on the computer. Now, you can't get on the internet, any of that. You can't send pictures on the email. But, just the monitor is like a regular monitor. It wasn't just, you could adjust it. You could adjust the brightness. Well, at the low security, now that's at the low. This is after what I'm getting ready to talk about what happened. But it was known Ducksauce would tell on you. He's going to tell on you. You're going to have to talk to somebody because he's going to tell on you. He would dim that screen so dark you couldn't see it, and he'd sit with his nose an inch away from it, typing, telling on people. I know because one time I caught him doing it at the low security. Now, see, at the medium security, the way the computers were set up was they was in this back little cut, kind of like it's about like this 10 by 10 foot area at the corner of the pod, and they had these things that the computers sit in. It's got a wall. And so when you walk in there, all you see is the wall. You can't see the monitor. At the low security, when you walked in the building, Carolina Hall, it's about an open 15-foot area that goes back, and then there are 2 TV rooms back there. But there are 3 computers on each side. The place where people wait when they wait to go eat, to get a meal, when they're getting ready to call your building to go eat. is in that area. So people are in that area all the time. People walk from downstairs to upstairs. They have to pass through that area. So you walk through there. I saw his computer screen and he was typing the SIS, which is the prison police. The email system had a hotline to the prison police in which people could tell on people. He's got that pulled up. First off, you got that pulled up. That's supposed to be a no-no. And then I see that he is typing, I have reason to believe that. And then he noticed I was watching, and I had somebody else watching, and he dimmed that screen down, started doing that. And there was a couple times that he did that. You couldn't let him know about something. You know, there were certain people that were paid informants in there, and I have every reason to believe that, because my buddy Fox came back one day and he told me, you won't believe what just happened. He was genuinely freaked out. They had offered him so much money a month and extra phone minutes if he had given them like 3 tips a month telling on people. Fox was in the mix doing stuff, getting, you know, hustling and everything else. And he's like, I don't know why you guys would ask me for this. And they're like, well, so-and-so. And they mentioned this guy. The guy they mentioned is somebody I would have never guessed. Big old muscle-bound dude. One of them Johnny Bravo bills, this dude could bench over 400 pounds. He had little twig legs. He could bench more than he could deadlift, you know. And I was actually friends with this guy for a good bit, so that twisted me up when he told me about that. But this guy I'm talking about had suggested Fox might be a good person to do that. So seeing as how that was something they did, it might be something, you know, with him. And Ducksauce was known for telling and everything else and every which type of thing. Now, from what I have looked up since I've been out, because I'm curious about these different, what did they do? So like the people I was around, I've looked up their cases, looked up the news things since I've been out, just out of curiosity. You know what I mean? You're around some of the worst, you're wondering what was the story, what happened there. So I looked it up, and it sounded like one time it was an underage boy and something else, and he went to prison for that. It sounds like the second time, from what I've read, that he was talking to somebody. I can't remember if it was somebody that was actually underage or if it was somebody posing as somebody that was underage. But either way, he got on like a bus. He got on like a Greyhound bus from what I remember reading. And he went all the way out to go meet that person. Well, the feds picked him up when they got there. So, okay, this is somebody who did time for doing this type of thing, got out and reoffended. So this is a bad person. In my opinion, you did it once, you know, that should be enough. But if you do it once, get out and you do it again, you know, what's going on? You're going to keep on letting people out? You know, so he was somebody like that. So, anyway, seeing as how he was Marshmallow's boy and he was in a cell with him, and Marshmallow really did like end up caring about him and stuff like that. I overheard a conversation one day and it just made me shake my head in disgust. Talking about Ducksauce, he said, and you know what? In that state, when he got caught with that, so it might have been state charges the first time because he said that. The second time it's probably a federal case. But with the first case, he said, in such and such state, that boy was like, I think he said something about the boy was 14 years old. He said, or 13 years old. He said the age of consent is 14 or 15, 1 year older than the boy was. And he was just like shaking his head like the boy was only 1 year away from the age of consent. And they gave him all that time. Come on now. That's your justification. I mean, come on now. Come on. Let's stop that. Let's get out of here with that. But anyhow, seeing as how they're cellmates, they're always talking, they're always around each other, and you talk to your cellmate more than you talk to anybody else because you're locked in. I mean, you're around your cellmate as much time in a medium security. The low security, not as much because, you know, you're never locked down to the low security. My first 6 months, I drink tomato wine and be making fried rice at 6 or like 3-4 a.m. Okay. But at you just have to stay in your room at count time. But at the medium, you get locked down at 9 o'clock. Okay? You get locked down at 9 o'clock, don't get out until like 6 a.m. And then they lock you back down from like 3:40 to like 4:30. There are times when you're locked down where you're stuck in the cell. That's just what it is. So you end up talking to your cellmate as much as you talk to everybody else you talk to. So 50% of your time that you're talking to people, you're talking to your cellmate. I mean, that's just how it is. Seeing how Ducksauce was known to tell on everybody and seeing just the facts of everything. That is probably why this word got spread about this. Or maybe people knew a little something more than I knew about it. I don't know. But ultimately, what ended up happening was Marshmallow got sent back out west, and Ducksauce got to go to the low security. I'm guessing part of the deal might have been not only a time cut, but to get him sent to a lower security prison. Okay, people do stuff like that, and they get these type of deals and stuff like that. You know, when I was in the hole, there was this kid that got caught with mail that had a whole bunch of Suboxone sent in it. Okay, you know, compared to, you know, why I was in the hole for money on somebody's books and them trying to piece it together. Like I put it, you know, and I get sent the medium even though I have camp points. Well, this guy straight up got caught with the drugs. I mean, that's an outside case. But he told, and that not only he not get charged, he got to go back to the low directly in the drug program, picked up right where he left off, didn't have to restart it, and he got to go home from there. Pinto knows about that boy. His name was Joshua Hernandez. He's from Puerto Rico. He got sent back to Puerto Rico. But he was my cellmate when he was in there, and he came back after he taught the SIS lieutenant. He's like, he believed me. He's going to let me go. I'm like, thinking I'm having to go to the medium. You know, I didn't even do much, and you got caught with actual drugs, and you got to go back. So they have stuff they do, I'm sure, incentives. And they told me that if I told, you know, Pinto that I would get to go to the camp, which is I was supposed to be going to camp. Since I didn't tell on my buddy Pinto, I ended up going to the medium security for 2 years. And you know what, Pinto's that's still my buddy, it's still one of my best friends. I get excited like a kid seeing him, you know, as one of my best friends, man. So anyway, seeing as how Marshmallow got sent back out west. And, you know, people from out west get sent to Petersburg. People end up in Petersburg for programs, and they end up in there for some protection. The Chomo program, it's protection, more or less, but they have a Chomo program, so that's their justification for sending them there. And then because it's local, half the people are just local from the area. So anyway, he ends up at the low security, and Marshmallow ends up back out west. Now, what he ultimately got charged with was a body. And I looked it up, and it sounds like, you know, he was, you know, open and whatever, and some guy who he had some little fling with, they left some type of a club or some sort of thing like that. Got in a fight, the guy hopped out of the car. It sounded like he ran him over with the car and took the body and threw it down the hill and into a creek. They didn't find the body for like 18 months. I imagine any type of evidence was long gone by then. And plus, he's in federal prison. He was doing 20 years at the time. And then he got sent back out west for that and was convicted based upon testimony from what I understand. He got another 20 years. So he'll be doing 40 straight before he has a chance to get out. And, you know, the original Chomo charge, he doesn't never need to get out. So it's kind of good that this happened. But if Ducksauce got any type of, you know, time off or something like that, since he's a two-time loser for doing the same thing, then shame on the federal government for giving him any type of a deal like that. You know, shame on them if they did that. But the coincidences, you see what I'm saying here? He was known for telling people on the computer. He was sent to the low about, like, right at the same time that Marshmallow was sent out west. What do you think? I mean, that's what I think, and that's what the word was. That's what the rumor was. So that's what happened. So there's a bunch of funny stories about that whole odd dynamic, that odd duo. But anyhow, that's about pretty much, you know, the gist of what happened. Being somebody as your cellmate, that's the person you talk to most, you know, maybe you had a guilty conscience from it and some other stuff like that, you know, and, you know, it's hard to tell. I know there was another person who I think knew something about it, but they didn't get time cut. They ended up still. There's a possible second person who was a douchebag. He was like a high school like field hockey teacher. Thought he was just like God's gift to the earth. One of those guys who's got like long enough hair to put it in like a little bun. It looks like a little, you know, man bun. I mean, you know, if you got a man bun, no offense or nothing to you, but I've met so many people with those dang haircuts that just think they're the stuff. And this guy was like Ben Stiller off a dodgeball, you know, nobody makes me bleed my own blood. You know, I heard him say, I didn't know he was in Choma at first, but I said something to him before I knew that. I said something about somebody making the best cheesecake. He said, you only think they have the best cheesecake because you haven't tried my cheesecake. I was like, you're a douche. I mean, that's like the most douchebag, dead serious. But he said something one time talking about Marshmallow was dangerous. You know, people didn't know. But he would have got time off, I think, if he told. And, you know, it's just the coincidences, the stuff that happened, and it leads me to think that. So anyway, if you liked the video, press the like button. If not, that's 30 minutes and 24 seconds of your life, and which you'll never get back. But I hope you did.